it's your boy Dustin from the Flying Chairs, the Rise podcast. And today, oh shit, you won't believe it, I get Gina here. And she is awesome, all the way from New Zealand. And I haven't had a New Zealand guest on here in a long time. It's been like a few years. And I'm so excited because they have a lot of ancient astronauts and modern day UFO sightings. And so, can you let my audience know where you grew up and how you got yourself into the UFO field?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dustin, for having me on today. Wow, this is really, really cool. I'm excited about, sharing this information with you guys. And isn't planet Earth just so interesting with all these interactions with UFOs and other beings all across the globe? It doesn't matter where we are, because New Zealand technically at the bottom of the earth. I like to say the top of the earth, but we get our fair amount of activity here. In terms of my contact, I've had contact since I can remember, my memories coming online, as a child. So I think I have memories back to around about 2.5 years old, but more in terms of the esoteric stuff, I remember doing out-of-body experiencing and astral travel and seeing apparitions or spirits and things like that. And then from the age of around 3 to 6, I've got these memories of having contact with extraterrestrial beings. And then it kind of it goes through phases. When I was about 8, I remember seeing a real UFO, actually in the sky, and other people seeing it too.
Oh.
And then moving through my kind of adulthood, I started working as a energy healer to begin with, about 25 years ago. Started seeing beings come into the healing space, not for me, but for my clients. And then that kind of morphed into my own 2 children being kind of slightly off planet and kind of attracting beings as well. And then kind of moving more in the space from around about 2019 onwards, I started getting into more group contact work just to find other like-minded people. So that's kind of C5 type contact, and seeing all sorts of things like craft beings, all sorts of things. So I can kind of deep dive into any aspect of that. I'm not quite sure where you'd like me to start.
Yeah, well, let's talk about your first sighting. And where exactly were you when you had this? And who were you with, your friends or family?
Well, the first sighting of a physical craft. So this is when I was about 8. This is after me having interactions with beings and going on to the craft, but that was more of an energetic type of interaction. But the actual physical craft that I saw, I was with one of my mum's friends in the backyard, and we were just talking, and I was getting a piggyback ride, on his shoulders. And I remember looking up and seeing it in the sky and then pointing it out to him, and both of us couldn't make sense of it. But I was like, whoa, it's a real UFO. That's what we called it back then in the 80s, right? UFOs. I know it's UAPs and all that now, but we're whoa, it's a UFO. And he was like, it can't be. And I was like, but what is it? And he was like, well, maybe it is. But he was kind of in disbelief. He wasn't he was just kind of in shock. And we were both just staring at it, and we could see it go from one point in the sky to the next. It had this it was like a traditional saucer kind of shape. And it kind of had this kind of glowing energy from it, a kind of greeny, limey green type hue around it. It did look metallic, sort of, kind of metallic, kind of just gliding really effortlessly. There was a few clouds in the sky, but the clouds weren't moving. There was no other thing. It was just quite mesmerizing. And we literally just eyeballed it until we couldn't see it anymore. It only lasted a few seconds. But interestingly enough, I was at a bakery or cafe the next morning with my dad, and in the paper, he was reading the newspaper. Oh my gosh, it shows how old I am, right? Newspapers, they don't even exist now.
Yeah, right.
He was reading the newspaper, and he wasn't even interested in the article, but on the front page, I saw a photograph of the exact same UFO that I'd seen the day before. And someone must have captured it on film. So this was in the 80s. I was born in the 70s, so this is, sort of mid 80s. And so there's a picture of the craft, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dad, what does it say about the craft? And he kind of, just went, oh, says that it kind of crashed in Australia. It really stinks. Apparently, it could be smelt for like 500 kilometers or something away. And like a farmer just apparently reported that it crashed there. But then he
Huh.
said, and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, is there anything else? Like, what happened? I was asking all these questions, but there was no more information than that. And I was really surprised that my dad gave it no interest. Like, he wasn't even excited about it. He was just kind of like dismissing it and
Hmm.
getting on to reading about the horse races, right? Like, I was like, oh my God, this is like a major thing. Now, the interesting thing is, though, I kept asking like all the adults in my life, questions about this, for weeks following, and no one could give me information. It was almost like it disappeared. Um, there was like slight sort of discussion around it just disappeared. But intuitively, I feel like it was probably like a crash retrieval and probably taken somewhere. Um, I do believe, like, and more in my adult life, I've kind of looked into this a little bit more, and I do believe in like Australia, there are like locations where like UFO retrievals are kept, but just not disclosed. So I never really know the truth about like what happened after that point, but I thought it was really validating to see that actually in the newspaper there was like an article and a photo about it,
Mhm.
brief mention, but then it never got talked about afterwards. And as a kid, that really surprised me.
Mhm.
But in my adulthood, I now realize that, oh yeah, it's kind of just the way things roll. Not a lot of talk about these things for probably good reason. They don't want to get the public interest too up there and too curious about finding out where these things are.
That's very true. And the fact that you guys are an island, and I think there's a lot of UFO activity in our oceans, especially in the Pacific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, no, we talked to Professor Ivy Lope from Harvard that came on our show and talked about his this is before like the new discovery with this mothership that might be coming in here pretty soon. This is another discovery back in I think 2012 where we there's an alleged UFO crash near I think New Guinea or is it New Guinea or is it or the Philippines? Well, anyways, him and his team went out with multiple boats with these gigantic magnets that they were dragging across the bottom of the ocean to pick up maybe some evidences of this alleged crash UFO. And their team did find something. It's something that was out of this world. It's like, well, the metals were, but there are like spheres, like these perfect spheres that they collected and
Oh,
all different sizes and stuff like that. And he's been challenging, or he's been going against the science community with his findings and stuff like that. And it's again, it's just a big battle. And he's telling me that like he's getting his name dragged through the mud, basically in the science community. But then again, he's just like, well, this stuff needs to be talked about and needs to be looked at in a scientific way too, and like especially like Jacques Vallée. He's like one of their scientists, guy big in the UFO community, back in the early days in the 70s and 60s with J. Allen Hynek. But yeah, like he brings a lot of the science into the UFO community. That's what we need, especially when we're up against. I don't know if you follow much with the Congress that's going on with our whistleblowers in the military here. We have a lot of hearings, and we're talking about this in Congress.
mm,
That's a big deal, right? Like we're not talking about Bigfoot or ghost at Congress. You know what I'm saying? Like this is uh, a worldwide phenomenon that's ongoing, and especially in the oceans. We don't know what's in our oceans. The same thing about that, right? That's
yeah,
just so insane. That's just, and I love how like I think even your continent might be the part of that ancient culture called Mu or something. You ever heard of that?
it
That's kind of
is.
like
Yeah.
the Atlantis of the Pacific that
Yes.
went under seas, and I think Easter Island's part of that. That's another
Mm-hmm.
thing. Easter Island. Holy buckets. You kidding me? I think there's only ever 2,000 people living there at one time, and you have to minus out the women and children and the old people, and you only have the men who can really fish and shit. And you're like, yeah, but let's move 75,000 ton boulders, cut them out the volcanic rock, and yeah, and then it has stories of the birdmen coming down. These things that had the capability of flight.
Mm.
That's the beautiful story. And then we have even I bet you have the people in New Zealand must have stories of flying boats or even again I earlier we were talking about tattoos. I think even like ancient astronauts that might have stemmed from some sort of cargo cult, something that the men had to see that maybe the gods must have been rocking too, especially when tattooing is almost a worldwide phenomenon itself too. So I feel like those are the kind of links I always kind of look for. If it's worldwide, there's got to be some kind of connection, especially when the time and distance are so far apart. And like pyramids, right? Pyramids on every goddamn continent. Do you know we have pyramids in Wisconsin? We have pyramids
Whoa.
30 minutes away from here. I think I got pictures here. At Aztalan. They even thought the Mayans here were the ones that might have built it. Oh shit. That's not what I wanted. Um, sorry. So yeah, they early astronomer early archaeologists thought that the Mayan might have came from the south and set up shop. But they have a weird story with Aztalan. These people came from afar. This is from aerial views. These are gigantic pyramids or step pyramids. You can see some of the steps on there. But these people, the natives in the area said these people came from afar, dressed totally different from they did, and then built this village with a gigantic wooden wall and would wage war with other Indians and practice cannibalism. And this is the Pyramid of the Moon. So yeah, the Pyramid of the Moon and the Pyramid of the Sun is over here.
Wow.
And
Is this in Wisconsin?
yeah, this is 30 minutes away from Madison.
That's amazing. And look how it's right next to a river. Like there are water sources near all the
Oh,
major
and
pyramids.
here, yeah, perfect.
Amplifies the
Yes,
energy.
yes, and it's perfect for them. Again, the water source and food source with the fish. And there's still tons of fresh fish in this river. The most mysterious, and then they found elongated skulls here too, and other weird skulls and pottery. And they still have UW students doing digs here and digging up pottery and other fossils and other uh, tools and stuff like that, ancient tools. But they uh, they found out that these people disappeared out of thin air, dropped everything, no sign of sickness or war. There's
Wow.
again perfect food source, like you just mentioned in the river in the back. Yeah,
Mhm.
there's no reason. So again, it was very mysterious where they came in the first place and why they just vanished. They have a princess that they worshipped, and she was buried with she shells that were all that these Indians went to the Atlantic Ocean to go grab. And that's fucking thousands of miles away. And by foot, I would have been
Yeah.
just like, let's just go to the lake next door. They should have never known. But like, yeah, she had special seashells that she was decked out with. Um, but yeah, very mysterious. And then we have 5 miles away from there is Rock Lake, and they have discovered 10 underwater pyramids that are elongated. There's a guy named
This is
Frank
so
Joseph who wrote
fascinating.
2 books about the pyramids, and they did scuba dives down there. They did sonar, and they're elongated. They're like this way. And the first white settlers that came into the area, saw them poking out of the water. And they were asking the natives what these were. And the natives were like, shit, man, they're the stone pyramids of the ancient ones that we don't even know about because they're underwater. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
But we know that they're ancient. Again, I don't know if you knew that Wisconsin was one of the last glaciers here in America
Wow,
that
no.
finally, uh, that's maybe one reason why it's a hot spot. I have no idea. Uh, yeah, they melt away. So like we have these rivers and these canyons all carved out from the glacier. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
That no, look, I love that you brought this up because
Yeah.
I've explored pyramids here in New Zealand, and I've
Oh yeah.
got my own kind of intuitive thing going on with trying to understand them more and the waterways and contact and how they amplify contact and where they came from. And you've just kind of like talked about the whole thing over another part of the world that I don't even know existed. It's kind of like, oh my God, there's a parallel story about happening in Wisconsin. It's just
Yeah.
the same as like a story that's happening here in New Zealand. And it's like, oh my God, that's awesome.
And again, there's got to be some connections. We have even the weird thing that I find weird, and I have my own belief in connection, is we have the Birdmen here in Wisconsin. We have
Mhm.
ancient rock paintings and carvings of the Birdmen here in Wisconsin, and you have the Birdmen in Easter Island. I'm pretty sure you got Birdmen in Hawaii and New Zealand and other things. I don't know much
Yeah.
about New Zealand gods, the natives at least. If you knew more of some of their legends or some of their tales, I don't know if are the Wajina. I know the Wajina are very uh, pronounced in Australia with they get more of the almond eyes and the big heads and they're tall
Oh yeah.
giants almost and like with the rainbow serpent as part of that too with the yeah,
Yeah, there's
that's
kind
familiar.
of
Okay.
yeah. Kind of like there's different kind of histories within New Zealand. The histories that get taught in our schools here is very limited history. And
Hmm.
then you go through more like the ancient histories, and there's always a bit of a debate because some of it gets a little protected, obviously. And so there's like it's said that like we've got the Māori people here. We've also still got some Moriori who were kind of here before the Māori people, but they kind of more based, say, on the Chatham Islands, which is part of New Zealand, but it's about 800 kilometers out in the middle of the ocean. But so and then it's really speculative, but it could be around about up to 15 other types of peoples before those
Wow.
people. So I think typically if people think about New Zealand Indigenous or First Nation peoples, they probably think of the Māori, but there's actually heaps of evidence to say that no, there was actually peoples before that. And so if we tap into the Mu people, because you're talking about Mu and we're
Hmm.
part of the Mu
Hmm.
here, and a lot of that information is coming through. And so we'll talk about the pyramids too, because it kind of um, so we have a pyramid. I'm going to quote this pyramid because we're not actually allowed to know that it's a pyramid. I
Oh,
mean,
all
it's like
right.
not allowed to know. It's like the government won't actually like release information about this. Um, so we've got this pyramid, but the Māori people, when we ask about the Māori people, what's the structure about? Where did it come from? They'll say, oh, it's before our time. So it's before them as a people, right? So there's kind of like them, saying and admitting that, yeah, there were people before their arrival into New Zealand around about 900 years ago. So we know that there was Waitaha people here as well beforehand. And we also, there's also a bit of talk around giants and taniwha and,
Yeah.
things like that within New
Actually, now I
Zealand.
think about it, I don't know if it's New Zealand or an island off New Zealand where they talk about the giants. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about there's one case that's actually really modern where I guess there was construction workers where they were I guess there was this one heavy I don't know if it was like a I don't know what kind of thing it was. Big shovel thing for a big ass machine.
Yeah, like a digger.
Yeah. Yeah, like a crawl, anyways, weighs thousands of tons. And I guess at night somebody moved it all the way down where it was, but they found the tracks of these things and they're gigantic. And they're just like, there's no way a human can move this or a bunch of guys, especially with
Mm.
feet this big, right? I gotta find out where that was because that I know it was in that area.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, it's so cool.
I
And
feel like I've heard about that story, but I can't remember if it was New Zealand or somewhere else. I feel like it might have just been somewhere else a bit close by, but yeah.
yeah, well, I think there's something special about the islands in general, especially Australia and New Zealand have a special connection with the gods and ancient astronauts, in my opinion. Especially with the
Yeah.
Gina, they talk
Mm,
the wall carvings and paintings that you have there in Australia too.
yeah.
And I don't know if the boomerang is heavily in your culture too, in New Zealand culture or not, but I always like to think that's another route to the ancient astronauts teaching us, right? I'm
Right.
sorry, but
Yeah.
no
So
dude's gonna be sitting there, especially when these people are hungry and trying to have shelter, to think about something that has some aerodynamics. If I miss my meal, that my weapon will come back to me, so I have another chance to hit it again. Like, what the fuck?
I know. Look, that's pretty cool, but look, we can't claim that in New Zealand. That's actually an Australian thing. So that's the
Yeah,
boomerang is the Australian. And you're
sure,
right,
sure.
though. They've got the most amazing like rock carvings and paintings going back at least 40,000 years or more, right? And the boomerang is, yeah, it's part of the Australian culture. It's amazing. And like you say, yeah, um, it comes back to you when you throw it. They must have got that inspiration from somewhere, and it's no coincidence that
Well,
we
it's just not
people.
in Mother Nature to see that, you know. I'm saying a bird's not flying like that.
No, no,
It's like, yeah.
yeah,
What? But no,
I
I
know,
just find
and
it amazing where it just shows more roots of somebody teaching somebody. And they actually do give the credits. A lot of these cultures do give the credit to the gods. Like
yeah,
ancient, I'm not saying like people in ancient Egypt weren't the ones building these gigantic things. I'm saying they were, but they had the tools given from the gods, and they actually
mm,
sketched this shit on the walls too at the same time. So why would they bullshit something so important? You know how long it takes to sketch something on the wall and make it perfect how they do? And again, it looks like the same artist, does it not? Like it's all stamped in. Like everybody has a different handwriting. You think all the things would be somewhat different because people have different, but no, everybody's got this. Everybody's got the same fucking. No way.
yeah,
And then you look
I
at
know.
no, I'm sorry, but and then you look at some of they're mining their boulders from 20 miles away, weighing thousands of tons, and then what healthy slave are you whipping on the back to do that? There's no way.
I know.
And you look at the toolbox and his dental floss and chicken bones.
I think it's crazy that we've been taught to try and believe this nonsensical stuff. It's like, yeah, okay, so you look at the pyramids or even Easter Island statues, and you're like, okay, so if we can't even build a house to last more than 100 years or even 50 years, without needing maintenance, and we can't even build roads that don't require like, fixing up every couple of months or years. I mean, how on earth does anyone think that we could have done that? And slaves, people that weren't educated or weren't, as back then I'm like, oh my gosh, there is definitely different types of beings,
Yeah,
power, ability, technologies back
I
then.
think there'd be more volunteers to do a job that crazy because there were physical gods amongst them. And then, like,
Yeah.
if someone's just, I feel like even like the gods that like someone's like just making up in their, if they're saying if this is all made up, there'd be so many different like people would just be like, no, no, I don't agree with you. There'd be just too many different ideas and debates, and it would never go anywhere. Something had to physically come down where all the people are like heads turned, eyes focused, and like that's the shit. We're gonna
Mm.
do this. We're gonna move thousands of tons. We never thought about it before, but yeah, let's do it. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like stuff like this had to come from the sky where it just stopped people in their tracks and it's like, okay, we're listening to this thing that's coming down. But no, yeah, just the slave theory and then how they're moving some of the stuff, the techniques they're doing. Again, the different terrains. Some of them are moving across. If you're going to different across the worlds of different megalithic structures, the terrains are all like this and across rivers. You're like, what
Mm.
the fuck?
It's crazy, right? I
Yeah,
know. Hey,
yeah,
I'll show you. I'll see if I can share my screen. I'll show
yeah.
you
You
like this
can share.
theory. Yeah.
You just go
Okay.
share screen. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Can you see that?
Yes.
The Kaimanoa, yeah. Don't know what else you can see on my screen, but anyway, that's
Oh yeah. There we go.
Okay, so in New Zealand, we've got this Kaimanawa wall. Now we have to call it a wall, but I believe it's a pyramid. Lots of people believe it's a pyramid. So this is like in a forest in New Zealand. It's not really signed, like, it's not really
There's a
highlighted on the
tree
map.
growing on it.
Yeah. So like super kind of like hidden, but you go in there and you have a look, and lots of really intuitive spiritual people have all sorts of insights about this. And you can see if you look closely, it's quite fine lines, like really
It
quite
is.
precise, the way that these stones have just happened to fall into a wall shape,
No.
according to our authorities. So interestingly enough, I do this thing with water consciousness, like I communicate with water and I ask it to communicate with me. And I took some water from a little stream that was just, close to this wall as such. And I asked it to express itself. And, is there anything that the water would like to tell me about the structure or about the environment around the water? And I kid you not, when I froze the water, I do a technique called crystallography, which was developed by Veda Austin, another New Zealander.
I heard about
So
this.
the
Yeah.
water I took from this area, sorry, that's not it, this one. So this is what the water showed me. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I instantly saw like the walls of a pyramid and
Yeah.
kind of
Huh.
energy coming out the top. So I kind of highlighted what I thought I could see in there, kind of
Wow,
like
look
a
at that.
pyramid, and then kind of like this energy coming out the top of it. So I thought that was really interesting because when I don't really trust authorities or like necessarily the narrative that's always out there. I like to explore other things. So asking the water to show me what's there, it kind of showed me a pyramid. I'm like, right, well, I'm taking that as my own personal belief, like my own fact that, the waters have told me that that's definitely a pyramid. The interesting thing is that, people have had LiDAR detectors, go over and scan this area and actually come out and show a step pyramid here. But when they took that to our New Zealand government, it was not allowed to be released. So there's all this controversy over it.
Yes.
And when we ask the Māori people here as well, they say, oh, that came from a time before us. So we know it's really ancient. Now, I find it's no coincidence that you, Dustin, have actually brought up like Easter Island and Australia today because my own communication with like extraterrestrials and beings, they've told me that why I went here in the first place was partly understanding some of the significance between three important spots here. So one being New Zealand, like the Kaimanawa Wall is near Lake Taupo, and that's like a really important like energy center. And then we've got Australia, like near Uluru, that's a really another important center. And then there's kind of like the slight triangular movement where there's like another really important spot being Easter Island. And you've mentioned all of those today without us knowing that we've both got these kind of insights about the place. So I believe the step pyramid has three waterways underneath it that have kind of dried up during the last few thousand years, but I believe they're going to get activated again. Part of the kind of like energy work that I do around water is trying to activate some of the water. So when I saw your photo in Wisconsin about the waterways being there, I'm like, awesome, because it looks like it's really active. Water has a huge part to play with like communication with other beings, as well as like the pyramids, because they have a lot of encoded light. Like water has heaps of like photonic light in it, even though people just think, oh, it's this liquid substance. But there's at least 7 phases of water. The beings that I communicate with, they've said that by the time we get to 2050, we'll know of about 24 to 27 different phases of water. But getting back down to kind of like this topic is like around the water codes, is that I've seen beings and seen craft actually come down into lakes, which I can get to in a minute, and actually do water swaps, like actually deposit water codes into our waters, and then they take samples and take that back to where they are. You also mentioned tattooing, right? So in a roundabout way, this is how some of the beings have described some tattooing to me, is when I see them work in the water, and there's this beautiful, like particularly with like golden codes and shapes and imagery that they kind of put in the water, and this imagery contains information, frequency, vibration, and energy to it. it's really kind of tattoo like, it's like
Mm.
almost like little tiny mini tattoos in spheres of water that kind of like this scintillating mist, and that's accessible by anyone. But some people also, I feel like, tap into those codes or tap into that imagery and decide to enhance or slightly modify their own frequency to be like sort of influence your own energy signature that they give out to the world by having these codes on them. So that can also be like a physical tattoo, like on your skin. It's partly influencing your energy signature. So when you're read by beings who can see your energy signature, I know humans aren't very good at that yet. I mean, there's some that can do it, but
Mhm.
these other beings, no matter where you are, they are reading your energy signature, which you have also enhanced and influenced through the art form of tattooing. Yeah, so kind of a little bit of a tangent there, but just trying to link in a few things that you've mentioned, which I found really fascinating, especially with some of the kind of things that I'm doing here in New Zealand.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to mention on too of like another reason why I think you guys are very special in Australia and New Zealand is the animals that are around there is the only animals that you're going to find in that area, like duck-billed platypus. I love that one because if that one's just made in a lab from an alien, I could definitely understand that because that one's just so gnarly, right? It has like venom and it has lay eggs, but it has to like it's half duck, half mammal, and half of laying eggs. And I think it has to eat a stone to chew its food and shit. Like what the fuck? It's just that's so gnarly. Um, and then there's other ones too. I just find it very interesting that why this certain area. It's almost kind of like the Adam and Eve, kind of like the last place that has the coolest, gnarliest animals. I don't know. Sorry, I just had to bring that up for some reason.
I love that. I will just clarify for anyone in case they think I'm claiming the platypus, because New Zealand doesn't have platypus, but Australia does. I
Yeah.
totally love the platypus too. I remember I used to live in Australia for 11 years and I got involved in this environmental project to kind of like save the platypus. It was like
Oh, cool.
planting all these trees near the creeks and the waterways that they live in. And I totally agree. They're kind of alien. I mean, I kind of think octopus are kind of alien, really
Yeah,
alien. So
exactly. And that's another thing too. It's like panspermia is that's how the octopus came to be. I think a lot of scientists are coming to that conclusion where they don't really have any relatives and they don't have any like fossil records of this thing. And then they even talk about the eel being this really gnarly thing too, where it doesn't have any sex organs, but it's still reproducing. And then they go to a certain area in the Bermuda Triangle to mate, but they go so far deep no one can follow them. It's just like, huh?
yeah, yeah.
Alien. That's an alien.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we have these Bermuda Triangles. We have it down by Florida, and then we have the Golden Triangle that's near Japan, uh, southern Japan. That's really weird. And then we have where I'm at. I think there's maybe some other correlations here. Of it's called the Michigan Triangle. We have the giant lakes here. If you know where on the map, you see right next to Wisconsin is this gigantic Michigan lake. You can see it from space. But yeah, there's UFO sightings over the lake, in the lake, coming out of the lake, people disappearing, boats disappearing, airplanes disappearing. Um,
Mm.
very eerie, very weird. Um, but yeah,
It's yeah, it's fascinating that kind of energy in those triangles. I mean, triangles are just an amazing piece of geometry. One we've got the pyramids, and then we've got these triangular kind of just invisible kind of energy centers where weird stuff happens, right? All this paranormal stuff, and it's really interesting how it just has this kind of thing to it. I know, like here in New Zealand, it's kind of more of a newish thing, but we're kind of exploring this triangular kind of piece of energy from the coastline of New Zealand going out. And from high, when you look at a space satellite map of the ocean near New Zealand over this kind of like triangular point from the Kapiti Coast going outwards, it looks like there's even more pyramids under the water there. But once again, it hasn't kind of been proven, but I kind of feel like there are underwater pyramids there, and it's all towards that kind of land of Mu that you were talking about.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
and within that region, there's been quite a lot of sightings of like USOs or unidentified submerged objects, like UFOs but underwater.
Yes.
And it sort of is speculated it's around 51% of our, UAP activity happens underwater because I mean, Earth is covered by, at least 70% water, and we are water beings, and there's even more water under the mantle of the Earth's crust as well than what we have in the ocean. So we just have so much water here. And these craft can just go in and out of this water area. Like we have this island called Kapiti Island, and on the north end, I've seen so much activity that I kind of nickname it like the UFO or UAP highway. It's just
Hmm.
like
Oh yeah,
zoom.
that's funny you said that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah,
We have a
yeah.
guy, we met a guy that's been on our show who kind of coined this word, the UFO. What does he say? It's not that obvious. It's the invisible highway.
Mhm.
So he was filming himself taking golf swings in slow motion on his phone, and then he looked back at the film and he noticed that UFOs were flying behind his head, and he was just catching him on the slow mo cam, and he was just like, "Whoa!" So he started focusing his camera to the sky, and he's finding himself just catching all this weird phenomenon, and he just kept on putting it online, and he was on a show, and he told us to do it, and me and my German colleague, we caught stuff on our phone, so it's like, oh my God. So there's a constant flow of UFOs coming in and out through the oceans, out into outer space, or even like different portals or vortexes that are just everywhere on Earth that they know about. The ley lines could be something that they travel on too, or map out the
Mm,
Earth and stuff like that.
yeah,
No, it's man, the theories just keep going on and on. That's why
it's
we need
super,
them to come here to tell us what's up.
yeah, yeah, totally.
No, it's just
It's
um
super fascinating with all the underwater craft too. It doesn't really get like a lot of attention, but I remember seeing one like doing a contact circle out on the beach one night, like on Kapiti Island, like close to the superhighway. And it was the first time that I'd seen like an underwater craft. And we'd been doing like kind of like the CE5 protocols where we invite contact with non-human intelligences, and we all started off the evening with a bit of sound, like nice sounds that, we believe that the extraterrestrials enjoy hearing, kind of like attracts them, and we go into heart coherence. We let them know through like a bit of remote viewing as well as coherent thought sequencing, where we are, situated, like showing them through thoughts a map of where we are so they know how to kind of like find us. And so we're doing this, and about an hour or so into it, I got this real feeling like look into the waters. And it's quite common that you kind of look around at your height or at the sky because there's a lot of sky watching. But they're like, no, look into the waters. And I looked into the water, and it was the ocean. And I saw this bright, kind of glowing white, kind of slightly blue, but mainly white, kind of semi disc, like a half disc sitting in the ocean. And it came up really shallow. And I was just in awe of it, like just watching it and staring at it. And in my head, too, I was like, how is it even kind of logically sitting there? Because there would be sand not too far under it. But of course, this is my human mind trying to like think in human science, and but of course, in their kind of like science, their craft can seamlessly like go through sand or water or air or travel
yes.
through things,
Yes,
right?
even through mountains and shit. No, you're right.
Totally.
They have man, the technology to do whatever they want. So I guess there's no bound. But no, I was gonna talk about these photographs that I personally own from Colonel Wendell Stevens Photographic Archives, and this is in Pensacola, Florida, on the beach. And this guy who's on the beach was taking photographs of this thing that might have came out of the water, obviously.
Mm.
And this F-117 that was in the area was like, "Oh, what the fuck is that?" Started taking
Yeah.
swings at it.
Oh, yeah, it was too, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what I always think, what do they expect to achieve? Like, why would planes and why do we want to kind of attack these beautiful vehicles? But anyway, um,
No, you're right. I don't think this was attacking at all. It was just like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
maybe taking a closer look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so amazing. And that's yeah, that's kind of like similar to the disc that I saw when I was 8. And I've seen like go in and out of the water before as well. Something about that shape that must be okay with water.
Yeah. Yeah, the aerodynamics of it. Yeah. Again, just I'm very blessed to own those. But no, yeah, again, I think the ocean has a lot of secrets, and I think it's very astounding that we know so much about outer space and we don't know shit about the oceans. That should say a lot, and that should be very, very scary. And there's people who believe that the Earth is flat too. That's a still. It's funny that that came back into the mainstream from thousands and thousands of years when it was first brought up in the first place. But no, it's just it's funny that. Do you think? Do you have you touched upon this topic of the flat Earth theory? You're one of the closest ones to the ice wall, if there was an ice wall.
Yeah, I haven't fallen off the earth yet, but
No, right?
look, a couple of years ago, I thought, look, I've got to deep dive into this flat earth theory because I don't quite understand it. You know, it doesn't, in
Yeah,
my head, it doesn't make sense. And I've been sky watching since I was so little. You know, I used to sleep on the roof of my garage when I was a kid. I used to get in trouble for it, but that's how much I love the stars and just observing space. And everything I observed, you know, right from a child to now, I've seen is spherical. I've seen like all the stars and the planets, they all come through my lens as being circles, right? Or spheres. Um, and I love being in the water and being in the ocean. And there's always a slight curvature that I can see in the horizon. So I was trying to like go into neutral and understand the flat earth theory. And I'm like, I can't get it. Nothing about it really resonates. But I gave it a chance. Like I looked into it and I gave it a fair chance, but I just don't quite get it. The other thing too is because a lot of my experiences, I mean, it's probably been thousands of orbs that I've seen, just so many, and they are orbs. Like there is something about the way consciousness moves and it goes naturally into kind of like an orb or sphere
yes.
size.
Hmm.
So even just from like I believe Mother Earth is also its own consciousness. You know, it's attracted us here. We are attracted to her, like to this planet for a reason, like loads of reasons. But part of that attraction, you know, her consciousness, I believe, is round. It's like almost like this macro scale of the micro things I witness in my life, like the little orbs and the spheres and things that I see moving around. I feel like Mother Earth is this macro kind of representation of it. Like she's this beautiful orb of consciousness with all these kind of interactions, you know, like in our cells, when I look at cells under a microscope, our blood cells and our you know other bits are zooming around our bodies, they're kind of spherical as well. You know, when they're in good health, they're spherical and kind of circular. So I've kind of deep dived into that flat earth thing. It's not for me, but
Sure.
totally
No, I was
respect
just
going down the kind of journey. Yeah.
no, I was just wondering what your take was, and I've recently ran into we had a flat earther on our show when we first started this stuff, and yeah, it's really wild, and they think a lot of things are being pulled over our eyes, especially when that's like like all the fake moon landings and all the people that can't go to outer space because we live in a dome. I mean, that says a lot too. It's like that sound. If that is the case, dude, it's like alien shit right there. Like an alien made a fucking zoo straight up, and you're living in it. Is that what you're saying? Like the, I don't know. It's just. Um, but no, I think the moon itself is very, very interesting. Because there's ancient cultures that tell stories of the moon was never there in the beginning, but one day it was towed in and to sit where is exactly where it's at. Because it's magnificent that where it's sitting in orbit is especially when the scientists said it just happens when an asteroid hit the Earth and created all the mass and it started this thing. But it'd be a zillion to one to have it sit exactly where it's sitting right now to cover the sun perfectly. I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way that an asteroid is going to hit the Earth and be perfectly enough to cover the sun when it hits the eclipse, right?
Yeah.
That's just too not. It's almost like a design. And where it does sit in orbit, it changes the ocean tides and other
Mhm.
things that grow on Earth and other things that like. It's very important to Earth where the moon sits. So it's just like
Yeah.
weird how that like ancient cultures even talk about this thing coming in one day and sitting up in the sky. And it makes you wonder, it's like, well, what kind of intelligence is that? And that's a perfect spot to watch your creation happen, right? On this earth. It's just like
Yeah.
the Adam and Eve place. I was like, all right, this is perfect. To have all these mixed race of beings. That's another thing too. Like, we have our ancient cultures, and I'm pretty sure maybe some of New Zealand's ancient cultures talk about like mixed beings and mixed animals, humans and half animals or half fish or some shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, like the moon's an interesting one, and I've heard all sorts of, theories and conspiracies and all sorts of things about it. And uh, because I'm an intuitive and I tend to channel a lot, I tend to just go into that space when I'm like confused, like when I've got like just a whole bunch of different stories being presented. I'm like, God, what do I believe in? There's just so much going on. So, I don't know if this is right or wrong, and I'm just, I haven't really given it a lot of deep thought. But two things, when I ask the beings that I communicate with, what's going on with the moon, there's two things they've said. In my lifetime, towards the end of my lifetime, that will probably start talking about three moons. I don't know why, but they say there's more of like, as we become slightly more interdimensionally aware and the veil thins and we start to see beyond our density a little more, they will start to see three moons. I'm like, okay, all right. So I take it or leave it, right? But that's just what they've come through with. The other thing around the moon too, and I've said, where did the moon come from? People are saying that it's been towed in and, all that stuff. They said, look, there was a time that the moon came in. So planet Earth, has been a focal point for trying to get, beings like us existing here, like managing to exist and have that, function with the type of oxygen and the water levels and all the other chemicals and just try and exist here. And there's always been tweaking involved in trying to get us to exist on this planet, and have a life, not just kind of like fizzle out and die too quickly.
Mhm.
So the moon was kind of like part of kind of like an introduction, but an essential one that actually helped with aiding our fertility, aiding our waters, like you say. It influences the tides. So, we
Mhm.
have higher tides when the moon is, on that our side of the earth. And women are very, men as well, but women are very, very influenced. Our menstrual cycles, if we're in rhythm, go with the moon cycle, the 28 days of the moon cycle.
Mhm.
The Mayan calendar, the 13 moon cycles of the year, 13, an amazing number. And then, of course, the Gregorian calendar, F that up with 12 cycles rather than 13, but that's a different, kind of crazy timeline that the Gregorian calendar kind of stuffs up our rhythm a bit. But we go back to the 13 moon cycle, that's more rhythmic for us. So I believe like the moon does have an influence in our fertility, one, because it's helping to govern our menstrual cycles, it's helping to govern the water. It's anything that governs water influences our consciousness, because whether people kind of realize it yet or not, and I believe that people will become more aware of this in the next decade or two, that we are in the time of actually, for the very first time in this age of Aquarius, being the water bearer. Water is delivering knowledge about our consciousness and where we're going with our awakening and leveling up on this planet. Now, the moon influences the water and it influences
Mhm.
our consciousness. So we're going to understand more and more that there isn't just 3 or 4 phases of water on planet, like gas, solid, solid, liquid, gas. We're going to understand more about it being a plasma within our body. We're going to understand more that even our thought is water. That's actually a phase of water. I've sat just before sunrise and watched the mist over houses and actually seen how
Yeah.
water interacts with our dreams. And it's like, oh, there's people there. I can like you can kind of see people's consciousness like during their dream state interact with the waters, and travel through the waters. When we talk about people dying or anyone that can see ghosts, they'll say they're like scintillating kind of vapor, like water. So when we're talking about the moon, I feel like it influences our ability to understand everything, because everything is water, including like spirits and ghosts in our dream time, and our bodies are water, the earth is water. I've seen ETs come and deliver codes into waters, and I believe the way the moon interacts with these waters is also influences how those codes get released. So yeah, however the moon got here, I believe it's kind of interlinked to who we are. I almost can't imagine us going through the rhythms of life without the moon. It
Sure.
just has a huge part to play. But yeah,
Sure.
I've heard all kind of conspiracies, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I like the water theory too of like our spirits or consciousness is trying to connect with us or even show us signs. Even there's a guy that I had on my show that uh, he has a theory that consciousness and other things, entities are amongst us in the sky. So he like takes photos in the sky and he mirrors them, and you actually see the aliens' faces and stuff like that, and like other beings and other. And they're all beings too. It's not like, and they're very clear. It's not like you had to like really think about it, like, oh, yeah, I see a face there. But no, it's really clear. It makes you think. It's like, wow, okay. He's just like, he was telling me that these entities are taking, again, like they can go through water, maybe fire too, and manipulate it in their way of communicating with us in a sense. Maybe the ancient ways of doing it. But no, no, I love that the freezing the water and then getting that image. I've seen like I heard the theory too where say like you take a healthy leaf and you just cut it and you put like underneath it like a photosynthesis or some shit. And like you see like the it's still there. Like the whole being of the leaf is there in this whatever machine that you put in it so you can see the electrical flow of current or whatever makes the shape of whatever I don't know. I was like, holy fuck, what?
Yeah. So
So
that's called like Kirlian photography. It's
yes,
amazing.
thank you.
It's
Thank you.
yeah,
Yes, that's what it's
yeah,
called.
photographs the energy signature of the plant. And
Yes, yes, yes.
and also we know now, like through that freezing method, that crystallography, it's been shown that the water can show you potential, like within our toroidal field, our aura or our energy field, depending on what you call it. In that toroidal field, we have all of our potential. So just like a seed, for example, or like because you're talking about a leaf, but like even if you just get a seed, like a sunflower seed, and you place it in water and then you freeze the water to see the imagery, you can actually see a sunflower come out, because it actually all the potential of that seed is already energetically held in the signature, like in the energy signature of it.
All
And
right.
I've done work with because I'm primarily like an energy healer, energy alchemist, and so in the past years I've done work with amputees.
Uh-huh.
And one of the most fascinating things is like when they've got a missing limb and they're like, I can still feel my limb,
Yep.
and I'm like, of course it's there. I can energetically, I can see it there. And so I have no doubt. And they're like, oh, thank goodness someone believes me, because like they might get people visiting them and someone like a visitor will put their handbag right over their leg, where their leg used to be. Now it's not there. So the person visiting thinks, no problem, just put my bag on the bed and it's not interfering. But the person's like, it causes so much pain, it's the bag is sitting on my leg. How do I tell someone that that's really hurting me, because my leg's not there, it's a really weird discussion. I'm like, oh no, I totally get it. So so through energy alchemy and energy healing, we like allow the brain to release that part of the energy of their body, like the energetic signature part, so that they don't start sensing everything through where the amputated limb is anymore. But in the same thing, like you were saying about the leaf, yeah, when you cut a leaf, the energy is still there.
Yeah.
Um, And science has shown as well with like those crazy little creatures, the axolotls. Maybe in America they're called salamanders. I think I've got that
Salamanders.
right. Salamanders, yeah.
Salamanders, yeah.
So when they lose a limb, they can
Yep.
even lose their head and grow it back apparently. But when they lose a limb, they've taken photographs of the with the Kirlian photography. They can still energetically see the perfect structure of that limb, and their
Amazing.
own stem cells and their body will grow the limb back. And that's because the energy signature and information is there held. And all the cells need to do is follow that line of energy signature, like to grow back into the limb. And when I
Yes.
see this, I'm like, humans can do that. Like we have limited ourselves in many ways, but there is no reason why humans cannot grow back their limbs. And I fully believe we can do it this century. I just feel like we have to get out of our own way. Like we've got really archaic thinking, like we were talking about before. We still like think slaves built like the pyramids. It's like, well, we're just
It's funny.
really limited thinking. Yeah, we can
I
do
was,
so
I
much.
was gonna say like one of the Spider-Man villains is Lizard Man, and he's a scientist
Ah,
that has one arm, and his whole goal was to regenerate his own arm because he missed it so much. So he was using like reptile DNA and stuff like, and it went horribly wrong, obviously, where he turns into more of a monster and stuff like that.
right.
Again, that's amazing too, is just to think about how humans uh they want that. They want to grow that back. So and they feel that pain, that phantom pain, or it's that again, like you said, like if you put a bag on that dude's where his leg would be, he feels that. And I've seen those experiments too, where you like put a fake arm with your body, and you have the guy who has a hammer and he smashes a fake arm, and you feel the pain of that. You ever seen
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
It's so- Actually, I
Yeah.
kind of want to try that just to fuck me up.
I almost felt it as you were talking about it because I was imagining it. I almost went like,
No shit, yeah. That would fucking suck. Yeah, I would not want to get my hand crushed.
no.
But no, yeah, the mind is amazing what it can do. Again, from meditation. Again, when you're in a state of meditation, like it feels like you can turn into a superhuman. Some of those monks who can do like the rainbow bodies, who can like meditate so heavily they die. He's saying like they
Yeah.
got to that point, like, encase me in a statue. That's what they do. No, it's amazing, but we're being limited on like what we only use 10% of our brain, and what we can only imagine what we could do if we had like even 15% of our brain. We would like bend spoons with our minds and have full conversations with each other without moving our mouths.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. And like I think whales and dolphins are like the closest to using more of their brain, like 15%, where they have the echolocation and using certain sounds and vibrations. And I heard too there is dolphin therapy where they were using kids who had brain problems and having the dolphins shoot radars into their heads and stuff like that, or shrinking tumors, I think like that. I had no idea. There's a woman who lived with a dolphin in a house. You know about that one?
No.
This woman, there was an experiment where they had like this dolphin that was like, it was like waist high water where this woman had like a kitchen and everything. But this thing would get horny and she had to relieve it. And I think she like end up having some kind of connect relationship with it, and they might have mated at one time. Some
I have
bestiality
not
shit.
heard that story. It has not made it this far down in
But
Perth.
I had a lot of Australian women on my show, and a lot of them had. You ever heard of Sean Whitewolf from
No.
Australia? Okay.
No, I feel like I have. Is this to do with animal communication or?
Yeah, she rides horses and all that too, and she's like a star seed, very
Mm,
out there. Um, but yeah, I've besides her, had a bunch of guests from Australia, and they all had ET sex stories. And I didn't bring that up really. It just kind of happened to fall upon. And it's like, What's up with all these Australian women getting laid here by these ETs, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, beautiful men, apparently. So it reminded me of a story that's very famous. I want to get this guy on my show, and he's from Sydney, Australia, and his name is Peter Curry. You ever heard of him?
Mm, no.
You should look up Peter Curry. Well, anyways, his story is he was laying in bed and it was about 7 in the morning, and he felt like a cat jumped onto the bed. And he's like, I don't own a cat. And he opens his eyes and he's noticing that he's being straddled by a milky white skinned, blonde haired, bulbous woman. Or she had her giant tits too. And he's so confused. And he noticed there's another naked woman sitting on the side of the bed watching them. And he's like, how the fuck did you guys get in here? And he starts to panic and he gets up from, he's laying down. And this woman cups the back of his head and pulls her into her big breast. And he just starts to panic even more because he can't breathe. He's like, what the fuck is
Mm,
going on? So he bites down on her, to get her off of him.
right. Yeah.
And he hears voices in his head like something went wrong, he's doing this wrong, and he noticed their mouths weren't moving, but he heard him like clear as
Mm,
day out loud, and they just disappeared out of thin air, and he's like, what the
uh,
fuck? And he noticed that he had a boner that was excruciating, and he had it for hours on end. And he was just trying to find a solution where it could relieve his bone. But he noticed there was something wrapped around his cock. It was a hair, a white hair but it was like indented. So if you like took your nail and press against your skin, and it has a little indent.
yeah.
He had to take a tweezers and unravel this hair, and it said that was excruciating. And he said when he did
Wow.
that, it relieved his boner. So like he's
Wow.
like,
Is
what
he
the
like,
fuck is this? So he gets the authorities involved and he gets scientists involved and did studies on his hair, and they found out there was all this like weird genetics from all races from all around the world and shit, like from like some shit from like Neanderthal blood and shit, like really weird, fucked up shit, right? It looked like it would be an experiment of like races and hybrids and stuff like this. So, anyways, he took a lie detector test too, and he passed with flying colors. So he's people are just baffled that this guy has the holy grail of alien DNA uh, just sitting there. So I don't know
amazing?
if there's a hardcore breeding program going on in Australia. I might have to come visit y'all. Shit, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, look, there could be. I've never been involved. I always joke with my friends too. Out of all the ET contact I've had, I've never had the hot ones. So it's just,
Okay.
and it's
Not
only come
yet.
across as like, yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Well, not we'll have you on our podcast. You might have one come knocking at your window or show up at your porch or whatever.
But in some ways, there must be extraterrestrials all around us. People have got all sorts of DNA going on, and I think
Right.
that's the whole thing, right? Everyone's waiting for like the extraterrestrials to come out, and it's like, well, half of them are here anyway, or like we're all a little bit kind of interbred, I'm sure.
You're right. I'm just saying there are very human like ETs, like the Nordics and the Pleiaren and the other ones. But yeah, like it makes sense too because we have our these holy books too that talk about these angels mating with humans. Again, the capabilities of even doing that, right? Or the fact that we were once seated, or we once came from the stars and we're just kind of trapped here on Earth. And I love how the Russian astronauts call themselves cosmonauts because their theory
Mm,
is that they're coming back home to the stars.
mm.
That's it. Like even more poetic is that, like that's so beautiful.
It is beautiful. No, it is really beautiful. And I do believe like everyone is slowly, over the next few decades anyway, more and more so with this awakening, is that we are coming home to the stars. I mean, we are all made of stardust. I really do believe that, like everyone here, we have stardust within us.
Hmm.
And it's all about just activating that stardust within us to start resonating with our home, planets, beings, our family, our star family. And the more and more we start to kind of activate that inner stardust and resonate with our star family, the more familiar we get with them. And it's interesting because earlier you made a comment around we don't use that much of our brain, we're quite limited, and our like dolphins and whales use more parts of their brain. And the interesting thing is that now with modern science, we can see it's not anything to do with the physical brain, because even people that have got parts of their brain surgically removed can still have greater capacity than others that have got whole brains. It's all about the consciousness and how we use our consciousness, because that's like that never dies, right? Our consciousness is always with us, like our soul, it's always just there, and we're just having this temporary like physical experience. But as we start to learn how to harness the potential of our consciousness, that's when we start to become really unlimited and do things like build pyramids perhaps, but we can do sort of other things like learning how to see or hear without using the organs that we have. You mentioned earlier about being able to like someone was hearing words but not seeing them speak, that guy in Australia. But like, we all have that ability. It's just about our consciousness being able to receive the telepathy. So like, yes, we have physical ears for audio and spatial awareness and things like that, but we also have our consciousness as a sensory system where we can hear as well. Like without our physical ears, we can hear things like through telepathy. But that happens with all of our senses, like even our eyesight. We know now that people can see blindfolded. Like you can train yourself. My kids are going through a training program at the moment, and I'm doing it too, where we blindfold ourselves so we can't see through our eyes, but we use our consciousness to start to see. So we can see colors and words and all that kind of stuff. So we have that ability. And that's also how a lot of people have interactions with beings, is through that type of sensory system within their consciousness. They start to see through their third eye or their pineal gland or their pituitary gland. They start to see through their consciousness. And we can do that with all the senses, like, taste and smell and, and touch. We can sort of feel like we're touching something or that something's touching us, even though we can't see that anything's there. But yeah, our consciousness has all this its own sort of sensory system. So we've got this other aspect to ourselves that only a small part of the population is exploring at the moment. But I believe like during this age of Aquarius, during this next epoch that we're in, we're gonna just all start activating each other and it will just start going bing, 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 and just more people having experiences of contact with beings. And it's all just down to the way that we're just using our consciousness and just allowing it to expand and actually see things beyond our physical limited kind of self that we are at the moment.
That's awesome. Would you ever do like a salt bath like with DMT? I could see you like, that'd be like your element right there, the water, and being in one of those pods and just being total blackness and then just blast off. You're
Yeah.
like, what up, gods? I I have heard the people who have tripped on DMT have talked to entities and aliens and stuff. I feel like I'd be fucking too terrified. I'm like, it's too real. I like, I don't know. I feel like my mind would just take me because I've already indulged my life into this culture. So it's kind of like I can imagine what my mind would like really put me through. All right, you
I
want to
know.
you want to meet him? I'll show you.
Yeah, like when it comes to anything like that, like taking, I mean, we can make our own DMT within us and we have our
Yeah, that's what
own.
I'm saying within us too.
Yeah. And
Well, I kind of wish we can just like I don't know, like pull an earlobe and you're like, oh, there we go.
yeah, that's right.
Yes, just to activate it that easily.
Yeah.
But no, it's no, I think meditation is where you can get your full dose of DMT or how to release it somewhat because yeah, it's weird that we have that in us, that
Hmm.
formula to make us trip. And then another thing too about another theory of like you ever heard of the smart monkey theory where I think it was where monkeys were started taking hallucinogenics mushrooms off of animal dung, and that's how consciousness and more creativity and culture started to take hold in our culture in our humans, early humans. It's just a theory, but that's just yeah, it's interesting. Who knows?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I think, mycelium and all sorts of, this planet has so much like crazy stuff when it comes to plants and all the things and the ways it can alter our brain and our consciousness.
Yeah,
And
let's go lick that
um,
frog.
oh yeah, yeah, I know people that have done that. Wow, yeah. So,
But no, again, like, who the fuck thought about that?
yeah, I know. Like, where does that idea come from, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, hey, I'm gonna wrap it up here because it's getting closer now. I have to get some food because I didn't eat anything. I just got off of work and then met up
Hmm.
with you. So, can you tell my audience where they can find you on Facebook and maybe a website or YouTube or whatever you have?
Yeah, sure. So Facebook is Gina Noetica, and on YouTube is Expanding Consciousness with Gina.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Gina, that you came and joined me and got to know you. And yeah, again, I would like to have you back because I like to have other like-minded people like yourself just kind of get together and just throw ideas and just make new friends. And that's how we do.
Yeah, love this conversation. Love it, Dustin. See you
Awesome.
again.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back and kick the shit.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Well, hey, stick with me for 2 more minutes.